it's just going to help you. It's going to change your life. It's going to improve your life. You can feel that as we're talking here today. Not one utterance, not 1 second has been a waste of your time, and engaging with him will only be a benefit to your time on a gigantic, life-altering type level. Can you talk about just a couple more things? Because I just want to give him the gift of it. You've studied a lot about sort of the heart-brain connection. Can you just talk a little bit about that? I just think this is fascinating.
Well, when we live addicted to the hormones of stress, and stress is when your brain and body are out of homeostasis. Stress is when you're out of balance. The stress response is what your body innately does to return itself back to order. So you're driving down the road and someone cuts you off, you jam on the brake, you almost hit them, you get that rush of adrenaline, you're aroused, you're awakened from that experience. There's a rush of chemistry that takes place and you're in emergency mode. You may get angry, you may say a few things, but most people just get back on and, and the body returns back to balance. You may talk about it to a coworker here and there. So that's all organisms are designed for short-term stress. But what we as human beings do is something very different. When we react to something, the rush of those chemicals become addictive. Now, we begin to use the problems and people in our lives to reaffirm the addiction to those emotions. We need the bad job, the poor career. We need to watch the news because it works us up into that state. So we become like an addict that needs the rush of those chemicals. Now, when the brain is in emergency and it's living in this state, what happens naturally is we begin to pay attention to whatever the stressor is. Now, where you place your attention is where you place your energy. So the stronger the emotion you have to your ex, or to your job, or to the news, the more you're giving your power away to that person or thing.
So good.
So now, as your stress is created from a lack of control, you can't predict the future, you can't control it, or you have the perception of something getting worse. So when those chemicals are beginning to become aroused, this is what happens. You start shifting your attention from one problem, to one person, to one thing, to another place, to another problem. Now, each one of those elements you have a circuit in your brain for. So imagine looking at the brain when you're doing that. It's like a lightning storm. It's just going off. And if you were to measure brain waves when that happens, the brain is very incoherent. It's out of sync. And when the brain's incoherent, you're incoherent. At the same exact time, if you're sitting across the table from a coworker and you're smiling and you're thinking, God, I'd love to throttle him, and you're arousing yourself in that state, don't you know that your heart is racing because it's perceiving a predator? So now as the heart starts to race, it becomes incoherent. And then when your heart becomes incoherent, you don't trust yourself. When your heart is no longer coherent, you no longer make choices that are going to be in your best interest, right? It's no longer the guidepost. So then, is it possible then to train the brain to become more coherent? Is it possible to train the heart to become more coherent? And we've done extensive studies. And you can't tell me you're too old for this. You can't tell me you're too sick for this. You can't tell me you're too out of shape, too overweight, too underweight. You have a difficult past. You can't tell me that you haven't meditated before. Doesn't matter.
This is fun to me. Like, learning this is fun to me. But I want them to know about you a little bit. So I want to step out of the heavy now and be to the light before we finish up, okay?